to Leading the Way podcast, where you'll learn neuroscience-backed ways to lead more effectively and have more fun at work with what you already have. Hi there, it's Chris from Leading the Way. I am delighted to have an awesome guest for you today, Claudia Richman. Thank you so much for being on the show.
My pleasure. Excited to talk with you today.
Absolutely, absolutely. And Claudia is an amazing, amazing talent. She knows that, and I know that, but you don't yet know that, listener. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about her, and get ready. You're in for a treat, as my mom would say. She's the founder of We Grow Forward, an organizational design and change management consultancy that specializes in helping companies adapt to changes and plan for growth by designing structures, processes, and practices that move businesses forward without leaving the people behind. She considers inclusion at every step, designing solutions to reduce systematic biases. She gets to know her clients' organizations, values, and employees, and uses that understanding to architect human-centered operation solutions based in 20 plus years of her experience in leading successful organizations. But wait, there's more. She's also the co-founder of Starling Training. Starling offers cohort-based virtual synchronous training designed to sharpen the skills that build productive, supportive relationships with organizations, teams, direct reports, and clients. Their Mindful Manager training program has educated and empowered hundreds of effective managers who've helped direct reports and their companies thrive. She's also the co-founder of the Kermit Collective, which we'll talk about a bit too. It's a small, high-trust community made up of leaders of boutique software agencies that share a passion for doing great work for their clients while providing fulfilling careers for their employees. She's mixed independent consulting work with positions at dynamic growing companies, including most recently 3 years as a COO at Eighth Light, a software consultancy where she created an awesome new approach to career pathing that values individuals' emotional intelligence and organizational impact in addition to their technical skills and performance. She spent the first 2 decades of her career in various PM and operational leadership roles in the advertising and finance industries. Super fun fact, we were talking about this right before the show. Claudia began her career as a communications coordinator for the U.S. soccer teams back in the Mia Hamm era, where she built their very first website for U.S. soccer. She's earned her MS in Learning and Organizational Change from Northwestern and has held PMI's Project Managed Professional, I can never say that, I just say PMP, cert for over 10 years. She loves dogs, beer, and travel. As a former ultramarathon runner, forced by injuries to channel all her energy into powerlifting and her Peloton. And she's happy to talk about any of these topics at any time and show you pictures of her dogs. Claudia, thanks again for being on the show. So many things we could talk about. You've got such a wealth of experience. One thing I want to jump in, though, is you value in-person, or at least synchronous if you're not in person, changed. You're not a proponent of self-paced training or on-demand stuff. You've gotten really good results by having people together. What do you think the magic is about that? What's different in that world versus doing asynchronous?
Yeah, I mean, I think that now more than 5 years ago, people are really seeking connection. So many of us are working, in this room all by ourselves, or if we're lucky with a dog or two. But looking for people to relate to. And my partner and I have built our manager training program to be virtual but synchronous.
Mm.
And virtual was by necessity because we launched during lockdown and the subsequent years. And we needed to find a way to bring people together and to help them become better managers and provide support and guidance for their employees. But we couldn't go into the offices. So we designed a program that meets together in a virtual space and has very carefully designed activities and carefully designed, we call them peer pods, groups of 4 to 6 colleagues within a company that you meet with week to week over the 10-unit session. And we found people really form strong relationships with the people in these groups. We carefully design them with the program sponsors to pick people from different parts of the organization who might not ever interact. And we also think about not having somebody in a group with their manager so that they can be safe and talk freely. And we find consistently in the feedback after the session that, yeah, people loved our content, of course, because it's amazing. But what they
Right.
really loved was having this dedicated time carved out and given permission to get to know people throughout the organization and to learn with them. And the companies we work with hire smart people with wonderful experience. And this way, they're learning not only from us, but from each other. Um, Kind of at the root of all the work I do is, how do you make more? How do you not think about, if I have this, you can't have it,
Mm,
and there's a scarcity. So how do you live in this abundance mindset of, if we share with each other, we can all get better. So this idea of learning together makes so much more. If you're doing it by yourself, A, you're probably not even going to do it.
right.
People need that accountability partner, and they need that structure. I mean, we've all signed up for virtual training, gotten
Right.
3 units into it, been all excited, and then never touched it again.
Right.
Yeah, you don't finish it ever.
Right.
And it's just not effective. You don't get that much out of it. Plus, you're just sitting reading it yourself. You're not talking about it. You're not working through scenarios where you apply it. You don't have someone pinging you halfway through the time between sessions saying, "Hey, Chris, did you read that article we were assigned? What did
Right.
you think about it? Did
Right.
you do the assignment? Did you think about it?" And engaging in conversation and really working together makes it so much more powerful.
Love that. I love that. I imagine you're deep into the tech world, and sometimes technical people can be introverted or introverted at times. And I would imagine the idea of groups sometimes can bring up some fear and anxiety for folks. How do you help navigate them through that? Because you've gotten great success and clearly you serve that
Yeah.
community. Is there anything special you do to make them feel comfortable or kind of get that going
Yes.
more easily?
Yeah, there are a few things that we do with that. The first thing we do is our sessions work in a live Google Doc. So we all have a slide deck open.
Mm,
And when I ask questions to the group, or when my partner asks questions to the group, there's often a slide there with open blank bullets. So you have the opportunity to come off mic if you want to talk, or if you don't, you can just go in and type. So
mm,
you can share your thinking that way. It's more permanent than chat, and it's in a structured place so that you have a leave behind to see all of the answers that people had, all of the great ideas people had. And then whichever of us is leading the class, we'll go back in and ask for more context around it. People can still, again, type or come off mute and talk about it. And we very deliberately build the vulnerability and the intimacy of the topics we talk about through the 10 courses. So you're not coming into the first session with a bunch of strangers being asked to share, like, what was the most difficult thing you ever faced, or how would you tell someone that they're not living up to their job description. We
mm,
build to that gradually, so the topics get more and more intimate, more and more difficult week to week. And the small groups that we put them in mean that you're only really sharing with a small number of people. You're not talking to the whole 20-person session. You're
right.
building trust with 4 or 5 other people who you're getting to know over time, so that 4 or 5 sessions in, when we talk about more personal and more challenging topics, you know these people, you feel safe with them. And even the most introverted people, and I am a very introverted person. I consider myself a performative extrovert,
Yeah.
but I know that I do very well in groups of, 4 or 5 people. I freeze with a whole room of strangers.
Sure.
But if I have time to get to know people, I will open up, I will share with them. And we see time and time again that that happens with even the most heads down, introverted, often brilliant software engineer
Right.
wants to connect and wants to share, but needs a safe playground to do that in. And we provide that for them.
That's brilliant. I mean, it's can be commonplace, unchecked, that whoever's the loudest person wins in those large meetings,
Yes.
right? And nothing against extroverts. They have their own beauty and gift too. It's not an anti-extrovert thing here, but if you're not leveraging the brilliance of everyone and their cerebral cortex and all their brilliant ideas, we have a miss. And with layoffs, and I see two factors. There's certainly tech layoffs, so people have smaller teams, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. Um, and there's less engagement, according to the Gallup polls, right? So there's a huge opportunity here for just about every organization to do the kind of approaches you have to really engage with people, right? And find maybe innovative solutions that weren't there before. I'm just curious, do you see that as you do this? Are there some surprise ahas that pop out of this process that companies or people are surprised about?
The biggest surprise and the biggest validation we had is companies often bring us in to do multiple cohorts, and they
Mm.
start with their more senior managers. So we'll come in and first teach this manager training skills course to their, right below the C-suite. Again, that's one of those hard things to say, right below the C-suite. And we do a survey before the session, seeing if they've had an effective manager. And very often it's under 50% of the people have said that they've had an effective manager, because
Wow.
it's not something that people focus on. And we work often with technology companies, and that introversion that we've talked about a moment ago leads to people not being natural managers. They can be amazing managers when they're taught, but it's not instinctive to them. So we take this first group through, and usually they are the ones managing the next tier below them. When we come back 6 months later to teach that next group, we do the same survey. And it's been 90% of them say they've had an effective manager because their managers have been through our program.
Wow.
So we're seeing that level of change. And a lot of the way we teach is designed to give them techniques to use with their team. A lot of the team agreement and the facilitation models we use, we say, try this with your group. These are ways to relate to people. So they do that. And we see almost twice as many people saying that they've had an effective manager
Wow.
after people have been through our program.
That's amazing. I'm
Yeah.
sure that makes the managers feel good, but there's more productivity when people are comfortable, they know, like, trust you, and they show up, instead of
Yeah, it's productivity, it's
right,
retention, it's creativity. It's
right.
it moves the money. It's not just we get better employee engagement scores. It shows off in money. It makes clients happy, it keeps people there, it helps you retain and
Right.
attract great talent.
Nice.
Yeah.
So you do something a little bit unique, just shifting here a little bit. I know that you've been successful getting actually competitors to collaborate, which most of us, like, that's verboten. I can't talk to my competitor, and it's win lose. What do you do there? Because that's sounds like some magic sauce.
Yeah, it is magic. So what you're talking about is this organization that I'm the co-founder of called Kermit Collective. And Kermit is a community of leaders of boutique software agencies, and was originally a member of this organization in a previous iteration. So my co-founder, Mark Rickmeyer, became CEO of one of these boutique software firms, TXI, about 10 years ago. And he didn't know what he was doing. He will admit this. I'm not throwing shade on him. He moved into this role and realized that there were other people in this role who could help him. And he called up other leaders of similar competitor shops in Chicago and said, "Hey, can I buy you breakfast? Let's all get together." And they realized that there was great value in having somebody else who's doing the same role you are, because being a leader of a small firm can be very lonely.
Mm.
There's no one else who's faced the same challenges. And you shouldn't have to rebuild the wheel every time, reinvent the wheel every time. So this breakfast turned into an annual conference. And at the time, it was called OpsComp because it was a conference for the operators of these companies. When I was COO of one of these companies, I was a member of this group. I was welcomed into this community of other people facing the same challenges in companies that we were actively pitching against.
Mm.
They were in our market. They were serving the same clients. They did the same thing. Yet we would get together once a year and just talk about all the challenges we had. Then the pandemic hit and we could no longer get together.
Mm.
And at that same time, I left my position. And Mark said to me, you know, you're not one of these, a member anymore. Help me think about how do we make this something sustainable that provides more value, especially during the pandemic when we couldn't get together. It was, you may know this reference, but do you remember Coffee Talk, Linda
Yep.
Richman on
Oh,
Saturday Night Live?
yes. Yes.
So no relation, but it's neither ops nor a comp anymore. So what is it? So we came up with this idea of Kermit Collective, and we called it Kermit because the role of leading a software boutique agency was kind of like Kermit running the Muppet Show.
Yeah.
How do we get everybody together? How do we merge all of these brilliant minds? How do we order out of and collective, because it really was a collective. So where it had been this once a year, let's go somewhere cool and just hang out by the fire and have some facilitated activities, it became how do we provide connection for people who are having such a hard time when we can't connect? And we changed from just this sort of loose ad hoc model to a membership model where companies pay a nominal fee. It's equal to about like 2 hours of paid work a month.
Wow.
For 4 people to have a seat in this community.
Awesome.
And what we have is we have a very robust Slack community where the most active channel is our staffing channel. And what that is it's people saying, hey, I've got a team coming up. They're available, they're senior, they have these skills. Does anyone need them? Or I had a client reach out who needs this kind of project. We don't do that. Or we're at capacity. There's about 35 companies in the community now. Every single one of them has worked with another company in some capacity. They share leads, they collaborate, they share talent, and it allows them to weather the ups and downs of the current economy. It finds seats for people who would normally be on the bench. So the staffing channel is very robust. Everyone has worked with somebody else. I will ask this that everyone. We admit new members in the summer. We've just admitted 2 of the new companies we've admitted. One is based in Europe and one is based in Brazil.
Oh, wow.
And they are just getting to know people and have not yet partnered. But I see them being very, very active in the Slack, and they're getting to know people and really diving right in.
Yeah.
So we have the Slack community. There's also facilitated questions. There's different affinity groups and interest groups. And then we have in-person events now. We started back with those in 2022. So we have had 5 events since then. We generally do one in the fall and one in the spring. And those events vary. The one in the spring we call Fancy Camp. And it's a 5-day event. We found a home for it. We used to go to different places, but we found this magical farm in North Carolina that we've just signed up for our 3rd year there. Nice. We take over the place. There's a bunch of different houses that people have their own rooms, but they stay with people from other companies. And we have a theme for the week and have a variety of social and facilitated topical activities. We do an unconference day. And it is amazing to see the connections that are formed. People really get to know each other. And we find that having that in-person connection then ripples through, because if I'm there, I get to be friends with you. I tell the other people in my company, Chris is a great guy, you should get to know him. Then they transitively also get to know and trust the people in your company. And that web really spreads out. And there is such a spirit of what we call co-opetition, which is cooperation among competitors. And it's how can we all do more? How can we make it easier for each other? How can we learn from what we've each tried so that we all are not always constantly fighting uphill? How can we run together on a more stable level track?
Love it. I'm curious too. clearly you have all good actors. Do people just act out of altruism and not try to steal people or steal work? Or do you have agreements signed? Like, how do you cover that?
Yeah. Yeah, we do have agreements and we do vet people.
Nice.
So there's an application process. And in the application, we ask questions about what are your company values? How do you live them?
Mm.
What do you want to give and receive from the community?
Yeah.
How will you participate? And then we have a code of conduct that we ask everybody to read and agree to. And when there are things that go a little bit off, Mark or I will step in and have a one-on-one conversation with people and say, hey, we appreciate you sharing this job posting with your network, but be sure to ask the company that's posting it before you do that,
Mm,
because it
mm.
might be they're trying to exit someone and
Right.
don't want to be public about it yet. So
Right.
just we'll guide them on how to behave in the most respectful way within the community.
Yeah.
But we've had very, very few issues. And
Yeah.
there's some referrals and there's some people just see us posting about it on LinkedIn or hear about it through a podcast like this and are curious and want to join. And we lay out criteria of what we're looking for and what we expect as a member of the community.
Hmm.
And it's been, like you said earlier, it's been magical.
Yeah. I love it. I mean, it's the altruistic part of me is like, where else could this work? Right. Because in the
Yeah.
corporate world, there's healthy competition. There's nothing wrong with competition. I don't want to say that, but it can also become unhealthy where we're, planning nefarious things with our competitors, right? And it's a win-lose. Like I have to win for you to lose. For me to win, you have to lose completely and vice
Yeah.
versa. Right. And not to get into politics too much and how the world works, but that expands to countries and like we're surprised that we're at where we're at. Like, why can't we all get along? Like, well, we're not teaching all get along. We're teaching win-lose.
Yes.
And again, competition has its place. There's nothing, I don't think anything wrong with that done right. But have you seen this pattern with other types of organizations? Do you think it's unique to software companies because they can be a little bit more altruistic? And is there a special bubble there, or do you see the possibility of this scaling in different aspects?
I think it could scale in other places. I think it takes having someone on the inside who has the trust
Mm,
of other leaders. It's all about building trust.
right.
I grew up in advertising. I think a lot about the big agencies. It's competition not only between agencies, but within agencies.
Mm,
I think a lot of things culturally have to change to make it a fertile ground for an organization like this. There, it was very much about who has the best idea, who wins the most awards. Um, and it wasn't about how do we make it more for everybody.
mm,
It was how do we win.
yeah.
So I've been out, to be fair to the advertising industry and the way the world has changed in the last few years. I've been out of advertising for over 10 years. So I hope that things have changed and evolved.
Right.
But what I saw in the odds was not a fertile ground for something like this. There are certainly other organizations where I think it could be helpful.
Hmm.
I was a part of a group when I was a COO called COO Forum, and we had a similar community on a much more limited basis where
Hmm.
I would get together with other COOs monthly to talk about the challenges we were facing. It was more, what resources are there for you to do your job specifically,
Sure.
rather than how do we amplify your company and how do we build your culture. But it was also a very welcoming, nourishing network of people in wildly different industries getting together to pool their knowledge and help each other.
Right. Right. Yeah. The only thing I've seen is when I'm in a network of sister companies in the same space. In this case, it was insurance, and where we didn't compete, we could talk about things, and it was one of the most powerful ever. We didn't really share resources and go to that level, which would be amazing as well. But even just being able to talk about, larger company, how are you handling this regulatory issue that's coming through
Mhm.
that's affecting things, or how are you serving this customer base better? Or how do you deal with a software vendor that's kind of a pain right now, and we're not sure how to navigate what's going on? I mean, not to beat up on software vendors, but uh, it's a really, you said it so well. It's lonely for small companies, but I think it's lonely for the larger companies too. Um, and it's got to be so validating. Just even knowing that someone has the same problem as you and that you're not alone. It just, oh, okay.
We see that all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it doesn't create an immediate solution, to be clear, but it takes a lot of the stressors, I think, away, and folks can start thinking about how do I solve this problem instead of I'm stuck and alone, and go to fight, flight, freeze, which is natural when you feel backed in a corner to do that. So, um,
And it builds the relationship so that when you're
mm,
faced with something like that, you're like, oh, I wonder if this person has had the same thing. And you know them and you can just ping them and
right,
say, hey, can I get 5 minutes of your time?
right.
And within this community, no one ever says no.
That's so powerful. And the
Yeah.
other thing I like, the way you use collaboration, we talked about this a little bit before the show. I think everyone's been in a larger company or a larger organization where collaboration means we all sit in the room and because we're all there, that's collaboration. And you're really talking about something very different. It's small teams, and you talked about earlier, it's finding a way for all kinds of people to participate and show up. Um, as not exactly where I'm going with this, but where normal corporations like pat themselves on the back, like we collaborated because we all got together, you're really moving the dial on something happening here, right? Even though it's arguably a soft skill, and sometimes people think soft skills don't get results, and that's an interesting belief. But when folks feel safe and trusted and engaged, they're showing up more, right? You talked about the money showing up, but I would imagine projects all of a sudden are on time. There's new innovations that come out. I mean, what sort of things do you see with your clients in that space?
Yeah. I mean, we see better ideas.
Mm,
Trust leads to creativity. We see people being willing to take risks because in our sessions and in the camps with Kermit, we give playgrounds for innovation and for experimentation and for failure
mm,
and safe spaces to say, what if we did it this way? And the groups present back their ideas. And I'll never say, oh, no, that's a terrible idea.
right.
But I'll definitely say, there are risks to this. Here's what may happen. What if you tried it this way? And ways to correct. But it gives you safety. It gives you a support network. It gives you someone else to, before you go running off with a wild idea, to say, oh, maybe they've tried this. So we see, has anyone ever done this? Or what do you think about? And just getting ideas. And someone will say, we tried it, we learned this. And if we could do it again, we would try it this way, which saves you that first try. You learn from their mistakes and you're starting on the third step of the stairway instead of on the first. But
Oh,
we very deliberately create these safe spaces and build relationships from the smallest unit. I talked about the progression of topics in the training. When we're at the camps, one thing I'm really proud of that I've designed is we usually have about 25 people in the camps. And the first night you get there, we sit down to dinner and you have a small envelope with your name on the outside and it has someone else's name on the inside. And this is your assigned buddy. They are not reciprocal. So it's not like Chris is Claudia's buddy, Claudia is Chris's buddy.
gotcha.
It's a chain. It's more of a chain, but you
Neat.
will have someone's name and your job is to get to know them, not to be creepy about it, but to
Right.
make sure that you've sat next to them at a meal, that you've gotten to know them. Because on our last night, we have a ceremony where people give something to them. There's
Mm,
a $10 limit on it, but it can be, I went into town and I got you that bag of chips that you mentioned that you love.
nice.
Or here's a poem, or here's a reflection. When you said this in the session, it really meant something to me.
Mm,
And we stand in a circle and we go around and everybody just gives their words or their item to the person that they were paired with. And
nice.
I'm getting chills right now just reflecting back on when we did this in May this year.
Yeah.
And the connections are amazing and it makes sure that everyone is seen. And you've gotten it two ways. You're giving it and you're receiving it to different people. And again, it's this forming of this web and this mesh. And so people really have someone that they're tasked with getting to know.
Mhm.
And we also do team activities. And I build the pairs within the teams so that last year we had an Olympics and we had a few rounds of different games that were, we had an egg toss. We had a game room tournament where people were playing Jenga and ping pong
Nice.
and just constructed situations for people to have time getting to know each other and having fun with their people. So we built these like one-to-one units of trust and then a smaller group team of trust. And then there's a few people from the same company who are on different teams. So then they get to know the people in each other's teams. And suddenly everyone knows each other and everyone has a connection.
Wow.
So it's very designed, but not in like a creepy overlord way. It's the Claudia was a camp counselor when she was 18 kind of way.
Right, right. And most people have a positive experience of camp, and then as adults we don't do it, but you very
Yeah.
much are doing that. And
And we actually call it camp. We call it Kermit Camp.
you should. I think it's awesome.
Yeah.
Claudia, so many great things that you do and you serve. How could folks listening connect with you and engage with you?
Yeah, the best way is on LinkedIn, and
Okay.
it's Claudia Richman. I do a lot of storytelling there. I will warn you, you will see my dogs. They're very, very cute.
Nice.
But it's always in something. It's not just here's my dog. It's ties to the work I do. They
Mm.
teach me so much. I have an 11-month-old puppy. I don't have children, so this is my first
They are your
experience
children.
raising a creature.
Yes.
They're not my children, they're dogs, but this
Yeah.
is my first experience bringing someone from infant into difficult teenagerhood where we're living right now, but it's learning every day. So I do a lot there and I showcase a lot of the work I do. And then 3 companies, and they're all the names. So it is We Grow Forward is my consulting business where I help companies grow and scale. Starling Training, and it's Starling.training, is the manager training. We do manager training. We also do consultant training. And we also have a session that we do to help companies downsize. We call it Downsizing with Heart. And
Mm.
unfortunately, that's a topic that's come up a lot in the last few years. So we help companies figure out how to do that in a way that's respectful and dignified for everyone involved
Nice.
and leaves the chance of bringing people back and helping everyone succeed as much as possible in these difficult situations. And then Kermit Collective is just Kermit Collective.
Nice.
And you can see what we do there, and you can see pictures from camp and all the fun we have, and see if it's the right place for you to be a part of this community.
So awesome. We'll put those in the show notes. So for folks that are on their Peloton or treadmill or commute, please don't hurt yourself. They'll be
Yes.
there for you to click on and engage. I encourage you to do that. Claudia is incredibly talented, as you can tell, and really moves the dial on some things that need the dial moved on, quite frankly, in our corporate world. So Claudia, thank you so much for what you do and how you show up and for being on the show. Before we wrap up, I'd love to know and ask this to all my guests, what's something that you're thankful or grateful for today?
You know, I was actually deliberately thinking about this morning when I was taking the previously mentioned difficult teenage dog for a walk this morning.
Okay.
I made a concerted effort to not have these in my head.
Mm.
I woke up this morning and I was like, I just want some quiet and I want some space.
Yeah.
We went on about a half-hour walk around my neighborhood in Chicago, and I'm so thankful for the actual community I live in, and that you should see window. It's not even a shop; it's a window. So you go by with your dog and you order your coffee on your app, and it's there when you get there. And they know me and they know my dog.
Mm.
And then I turn the corner and run into someone I know because I see them all the time. And then I come home to my wonderful husband, who I can go shove the dogs in the room with him so I can come talk to you without them making noise.
Right.
And I stopped and just took a picture of the sun coming up through these trees. And I live in the middle of Chicago. I live in a city. And there can be that kind of peace and nature and quiet and community is really special.
That's beautiful. Thanks for sharing that. That's absolutely lovely. Thank you again for being on the show. And awesome listeners, please just do your own magical things, which are subscribe and share this with a friend. Even more importantly, you probably know someone that could benefit from this. And this is like one of the most loving things you can do. I'm like, hey, check out Claudia. She's doing some cool stuff. So please do that. And please also keep leading the way. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you for listening to Leading the Way podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe so you won't miss other great episodes like this one. And if you're ready for more in your workplace, be sure to go to aintent.com. You'll find lots of free tools, assessments, and ways to engage directly with us to get your own epic results. We'll see you there.